you guys for joining us here for Tac City Unfiltered episode 4. I'm your host, producer Derek, joined by Sonny and guests Tommy and Jay from SureShotReady.com. If you have joined us here before, you guys know our spill already. If it's your first time to the show, here is your warning. We are probably going to offend you with this show, and guess what? We don't care. We are most likely going to have different opinions than you guys as well, and that's okay. That's the whole point of the show. We want to have the conversation with you guys. We want to hear all the different stuff out there. And again, me, Sonny don't agree, and our guests here probably aren't going to agree on everything we talk about.
We don't have any safe spaces to hide in.
Yeah, no safe space. So,
good, bad, whatever, indifferent, don't matter.
We are not trying to please you with this show. And so all the snowflakes watching, this might be the time for you guys to tune out. So with that said, you guys had your warning. Let's get into it. And so what we like to do first before we get into anything crazy here is just introduce your guys' self. So Tommy, you're the owner of SureShot, or how's that go?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so how'd that all get started with you?
Oh, boy, how did it not get started with me? So a long time ago, I was in the military. Got out of the military, went into the private working world for about 8 years and realized this is the story I like to tell. And the fact of the matter is I was never my son's age and woke up in the morning and said, I want to do what I do for a living. Nobody wants to sit in an office all day and, I don't know, be surrounded by walls for 12 hours a day and just live that way. You know, I wanted to be outdoors and, you know, being a young kid, who doesn't get out and play G.I. Joe with their buddies? So I realized also after being in the military for a while that my training that I felt like I was interested in having wasn't complete. So I got the opportunity, being a veteran and everything like that, to continue my training with some courses that I might not have been able to get into, not have been being a veteran. And just going through that process, I realized over another 8 years or so that there wasn't a lot of opportunities out there for civilians. So this started back in 2008, very different market than it is today. But so in 2015, I thought, you know what, I want to bring what I've learned since 2008 to 2015 and kind of bring some of the instructors and good people that I know from the military, have formed relationships over that period of time together, and try and bring quality training to the civilian world. Of course, we do train active duty military. We were just with them this last weekend, law enforcement officers, but there's a large portion of the civilian population or that haven't served before, for whatever reason, that would like to have better training and quality training, you know, military style, if you will. So I wanted to figure out how to bring that out, and that's pretty much what we did.
Okay.
So.
Cool. And so, yeah, I was reading a little bit on your guys' like courses and stuff that you guys offer and everything. But Jay, before we get into some of that stuff, what's kind of your background? How did you get all started with all this?
I'm Jay, and I am a retired Special Forces Operations Sergeant. I was in 5th Group and then Special Missions, and I've come on board with SureShot to kind of do the overall management of the training and the retail piece. Basically a general manager. But so for the last week, I've been integrating into SureShot. We ran a good TAC med class and an austere med class this weekend. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of where I'm at right now. And I have a mohawk, I guess. That's like my token. That's my secret squirrel.
Okay, fair enough. One of the things that I've been kind of coming across online is first-time shooter videos. I'm seeing like people that are like 40 years old who might be against guns or stuff like that. And because you guys do training, you guys teach gun handling and all that stuff like that. What's your experience with people who have never shot a weapon before or stuff coming into your guys' training facility?
What percentage of the people you deal with are first-timers?
Yeah.
I would say it's actually pretty large, which is it's interesting and it's great. We run a class called our Fire Familiarization class, and we have one coming up next weekend in March. It's booked out, and we had to open a second one in April, which we didn't even have on the schedule, and it's booked out, and we never even advertised it. Oh. The instruction that we give, I guess you have to see it, but I mean it is high quality, and it's delivered in a way, this particular course, that it's very comfortable for the first-time shooter. I call it the dead rat syndrome. We have a lot of folks show up that haven't held a firearm, even held a firearm before, and they're holding it out like, oh my God, this thing is nasty, right?
Yeah.
And by the end of the classroom portion that evening, they're hands-on with the firearm for 90% of the class. We're using dummy rounds to go over, you know, loading, unloading, jam clearing, just going through the entire process with them: stance, grip, sight alignment, trigger control. in an environment with other people, carrying firearms, how to be comfortable in and around other people, and the proper procedures for that. So by the end of the night, they're super comfortable. The next day, we open that back up on the range, and they're a little bit shaky. But in that course, a lot of folks that are shooters are static shooters. We do introduce to them shooting and moving, just a little bit. We do a walk and shoot. They're engaging targets down, and there's enough targets, enough shots where they're forced to do a mag change on the move. And it's really pretty exciting for me because I film them, and you can see these guys from day one, just a few hours ago, the night before, doing the dead rat syndrome. And the next day, they're moving through a mag change without even really having to stop and check what they're doing.
Yeah.
Just because their muscle memory, they only got good training at that point. They don't have any range scars. So as they're walking, now they're not just focused on the gun, they're focused on moving, so their muscle memory just moves through the mag change and things like that. It's a lot of fun, and they enjoy it, and most of them graduate on or come up to our more experienced classes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Jay. So dry firing, I've heard from multiple instructors the value of dry firing. A lot of these guys, they say that they dry fire probably more, as high, like 80% or more of the time than live fire. Like how valuable or what weight do you give dry fire training?
Dry fire is a critically important skill that most new shooters and kind of the intermediate skill set level shooter they tend to blow it off, but it is super critical. The difference between being kind of that NASCAR level shooter and that Bush League level shooter is the folks who pro up and have the good times and the good skill sets, they go home and dry fire that stuff. It's a hard pill to swallow, but at the end of the day, shooting skills are highly perishable. You need to tinker with them, a little bit every day if you really want to master the skill. And unless you live on a gun range, dry firing is an invaluable skill. But really, what you got to get it down to, and this is how I try to explain dry fire. A lot of the mechanics, when especially with new shooters, you're looking at the mechanics of functioning the weapon. A lot of it is, in their mind, as they're thinking through this because they're new, it's a sequence of events. If this happens, starts here, conduct these drills, then get your gun back into action. Well, that's all well and good but if you're in a gunfight and you're trying to maintain your situational awareness, that stuff just needs to be on autopilot. So the only way you're going to get it burned into your subconsciousness, and that's the part of your brain that's activated in a gunfight, but the only way you're going to burn it into your subconsciousness is through repetition. That's it. It's the only way to program your reptilian brain. But if you want to shoot like a pro, you got to dry fire. That's it. There's no two bones about it.
Yeah, I have on my iPad system, I have 2 different laser trainer systems, and I actually use my airsoft guns. And I just set up the target on the wall, set up this on a tripod, and with the laser system, it just, boom, and I'm there, magazine's out, or I'll quick, and it's got timing. It's one of those things that, I see once I started using that stuff, it helps so much more, especially coming down here and playing on the field, those, quick kind of reactions that you get. And, again, that repetition. And I know from when I first started playing here to now where I'm at, it's like muscle memory that you were saying, that it's, okay, I know what's going to happen at this point. Let me engage this way, or let me engage this way. And I'm not dying as much on the field.
Yeah. And I think, even on the airsoft fields, it's kind of easy to get this. Is that when you're trying to maintain that situational awareness, you've got enemy components all over the place. Everybody's mobile. It's a dynamic environment. The last thing I need to do is take my eyes off that dynamic environment, so to speak, to concentrate on a very basic fundamental skill that I refuse to train on in my off time, right? So I can do my dry fire, get those immediate action drills kind of burned into my reptilian brain so that my hands, they're just manipulating the weapon. I can kind of feel the report of the weapon. It's not doing what it's supposed to do, and I just kind of subconsciously kind of go into whatever the immediate action drill is for that particular, weapons report. But, by drilling that way, I can keep my eyes up and say, hey, look, there's the enemy shooters, there's position, this is my cover and concealed position, and this is my egress out of here if I can't stay and fight.
This funny, this last week we had our CQB class, and some of the SEAL guys came up, and one of them made this comment to the group. And we've heard these kind of comments in various degrees through all the courses we've had from different instructors. But he really nailed it. He says, to be honest with you guys, if the shit hit the fan or zombie apocalypse or wherever it may be, I would take an airsofter over an LAPD officer, the average LAPD officer versus an airsofter plays every weekend. He says the reason being is most cops don't ever train as often or shoot as often as an airsofter plays, whether it's reloads and the mechanics of it. I'd rather go with somebody that has that built-in innate, awareness and whatnot as the average cop.
But see, that's why I look at that's why I prefer the term. I like the milsim folks who go in for the realism. They're trying to be tactically accurate. Most of the milsim crowd. And I don't know that there's much of a difference, but my experience has been around the milsim folks.
Mm-hmm.
They go out of their way to make sure that the mechanics and the fundamentals and their apply are as close to accurate as possible. I really appreciate that. If you see milsim outside the United States where the Second Amendment isn't a thing, airsoft and milsim is really, really big in the veteran communities like in England and in Europe because they don't have access to firearms. And one of the ways these guys stay sharp on their skills is they go out and they hit these relatively low cost training simulators, and that's airsoft. And they'll go out there and they'll hit it hard. So airsoft, if you take it seriously and use it as the training tool it could be, it's actually a fun training tool to work with.
It's the ultimate dry fire.
Yeah, when I used to dry fire, I had a gas operated, and I forget who made it, but it was basically a Glock. It fit the Glock holsters, had the light on it, but if the weather was bad or I didn't have the budget for ammo, I could take that bad puppy out and just works. You really get much recoil management practice out of it, but certainly getting your sights aligned after taking, for multiple shot strings, it works great for that.
What do you guys think about this? I've heard this from, I think it was Tim Kennedy. I believe it's Tim Kennedy. I could be wrong. He was saying that whenever he hits the range, he rarely shot full mags. So he'd put a dummy round every so often in a mag, but he would never have a full round. Sometimes he'd have 3 rounds in a mag, sometimes 6, whatever it may be, so that he would practice his reloads and he wouldn't subconsciously, this is how many rounds I have. I'm about there reload. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's a good training tool. I do that with our students. I'll have them, depending on the course, I'll have them kind of stagger their round count. 2, 3, 4, 5.
Or see if they're
so they can't predict when the weapon's going to go dry. Maybe I'll grab a couple mags out of there and I'll mix them up for him so he doesn't know which low count round he has. Throw a dummy round in there, but that's a great training tool. Anytime you can build into your reptilian program an immediate action response. Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, short rounds and staggering the round count.
Yeah, I've done that on the field here because one of my pistols, a PPQ, I have like 8 magazines for it. So I carry like 6 of them on me, but I only put 2 rounds in it. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to challenge myself. Because I get where we can get bored on the field sometimes. We just are doing the same thing over and over. But I like to keep myself fresh with different kind of challenges. I'll go out there with a revolver pistol, and I only got 6 rounds. I got to make them count. Same situation like with the PPQ. I'm like, well, I only have 2 rounds in this mag. I have to change. I get to the right cover, make sure I get those 2 shots, get to the next cover that I need to go. So I try to challenge myself in those kind of sense. So I'm constantly staying fresh. And so with the different kind of stuff, my biggest thing that I get bored with shooting real stuff is that it's just paper most of the time. Paper or a still target. And do you guys see that fatigue from range, from the range where you get people just that are kind of it's the same thing over and over? Or how do you guys keep that fresh with training and stuff like that? Because you might have some people that come and get the course repeated, right? You have repeat customers.
Yeah, but you kind of have to do that reputation. So I try to tell folks yes, we want to have a fun day on the range. We want to have a fun day of training, but folks gotta kind of have to, kind of come back out of it a little bit and hey, look, in the palm of my hand, I have the power of life and death.
Yeah.
So out of respect for what the power of the firearm provides you, it's you may have to go out to the range and it may not be the funnest time on there, but if you're going to carry a firearm and you're planning on within your life to dispense with lethal force, then you owe it to yourself and everybody around you to go out on the dry fire, go out on the flat range when you need to and work your fundamentals, boring though they may be.
Okay.
And sometimes not always when it's nice and sunshine, perfect targets.
Yeah.
And you're rested, maybe.
Get some fog.
I love the train courses where they put you in a stress and you're getting your heart rate and trying to hit targets then
So that's my preference. I like to end most training, if not all of it, on some type of immersion level event. Try to get as close to a full mission profile as one can achieve within a single or maybe 2-day training event. I think the flat range is great. It's a great place to start, but it's at best maybe 50% of your training. The other 50% of it is you need to hit your simulators and you need to go in there and interact with your targets. Because we see it all the time, you know, folks that come out there, they'll look great on the flat range. They have this great stance, the grip's perfect, and, you know, they're looking real ninja on Instagram.
It's almost like sports shooting.
Yeah, but then when they go in and the target starts interacting with them, either through simunitions or airsoft or some type of, you know, paint weapon, I mean, all those fundamentals just go right out the window.
There's a consequence now.
Yeah, there's consequences now to screwing up your tactics and not pieing the room off. And you watch those awesome flat range Instagram guys just walk into the room and just lose their shit the first time the target's looking back at them.
On one level, remember that show Top Shot? Where I love I love the show. They always have these resumes, you know, world champion this and whatever, and then they give them the show and they put them in this environment where they're uncomfortable. And next thing you know, these world champion whatever can't even put a fucking mag in a gun and hit a target that's, you know.
So our students got a real big taste of that this past Saturday.
And where was this weekend?
Burrow Canyon up in Azusa.
Oh, yeah,
Is that how you
okay.
say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous landscape. Man, the class photo that came out of that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But, this Saturday, some of our students got a big taste of that. Again, another hard pill to swallow for folks who are just kind of getting into this is they think all the commandos came out here and just sprinkled this pixie dust and all of a sudden it's magical training. The truth is it's not. Most SEALs, Rangers, SF guys, they're just really good at those very basic things that everybody's supposed to know how to do. So I tell people, if you take one basic skill and then another basic skill, and you combine them, all of a sudden you have got very hard to complete advanced training, and everybody's like, yeah, bullshit. So we take them out on the range, and I just make students perform emergency action drills, and then combine it, you know, apply a tourniquet in a self-aid care under fire type setting. So it's apply a tourniquet plus perform your emergency action drills. Two things done by themselves, very, very easy to do. But as most of the students will tell you out on the gun range, yeah, when we start
Sounds good on paper.
Drill begins and the blood starts squirting, you know, those two basic skills become extraordinarily complicated real quick.
I think one of the guys this last weekend mentioned something to that effect. I guess it was like a Bruce Lee quote or something. It says, I fear the guy, Bruce Lee said something to the effect of, I don't fear the guy that knows 5,000 or 1,000 moves. The guy that can throw the punch 1,000 times as opposed to 1,000 moves. I fear that one guy that does that one thing really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's what the dry fire is intended to replicate is speed, accuracy. But for me, you know, like a military guy, when I'm looking at a force as a whole, yeah, I want everybody to have sub-second draws and all that ninja stuff. But the truth is, I need reliable folks. So I need you at 25 meters. If your cold draw stroke is about 1.8 seconds, if you're under 2 seconds on a cold draw stroke at 25 meters and you're engaging the target successfully, you know, you get 10 out of 10 hits, I'm calling you T for trained, right? You're good to go. You may not be the fastest shot on the planet, but you're maxing out the impact of that weapon system, you know, 25 meters. It's the full range of the weapon. I think you're good to go. Just so long as, you know, they can engage targets laterally and in depth, not just bang a steel target. But
it's like I always bring the Wyatt Earp thing. He says, I wasn't the fastest draw, but I was the most deliberate, and what I aimed at, I shot.
Yeah, you know what's funny is even some of them Wild West gunfighters kind of understood. Now, academically, we've done a better job articulating these fundamentals, but the fundamentals really haven't changed. So some of your prolific gunfighters from the Wild West, if you kind of read what they're like, Bat Masterson, for instance, had this huge front sight post on his pistol. Well, by today's standards, we kind of get it, right? It's like, he's coming up hard out of that holster onto that front sight post. It's like, all right, Bat Masterson, you're the man. But, you know, 20, 30 years ago, when that type of tactical shooting wasn't really the thing, you know, it was just kind of seen as, you know, hokey. It's like we got 1911s and all these other things, but Bat Masters is out there coming up hard on that front sight post, smoking turkeys. So we apply that same fundamental, you know, those same basics.
Shooting every day too. Back then, they were gun. I mean,
I mean, you don't have to just go to U.S. service members either. I made a post on my Instagram account not too long ago. I forget the dude's name, but he's a Sparrow assassin out of the Philippines. I mean, you want to talk about from the concealed carry, a sub-second draw, dude will crack a round off before you even realize what's happening. But, you know, and he'll tell you in his guerrilla training, they were required to practice their draw stroke, you know, about 10 minutes a day. So that's what I tell folks. You don't need to do it for an hour, but 5 to 10 minutes a day, work. Get those optics, get that trigger squeeze, and the mechanics should probably do all right.
There's some departments, police departments across the globe that are basically military forces, because they're engaging like every day. We're here, even say LAPD. I mean, I don't know how many times an officer actually fires his weapon, but in something like, for instance, I was watching a show where I can't remember, it's not on the air anymore, but there was a former SAS guy that went around to different departments and military units across the country, world, and he ended up in Brazil, and I want to say it might have been Rio, but he was following on their police department, and they were paramilitary. They had the SWAT vehicle, and he looked at their vehicle, and it had bullet holes through the windshield, right? And he asked them, how often you guys fire your weapons? Every day. Every day they're firing, and like on a daily basis, and they're going into the I forget what they call the slums out there, but they're finding drug dealers and drug lords every day. Yeah, every day.
Well, there was just the recent incident we had here in downtown LA where we had Delta Force come in and train with the SWAT.
Was that what the hell we saw the
with
plane?
The helicopters? Yeah. Everyone went crazy, ape shit. Like, what's going on? Yeah, what's going on? But when they did post interviews with some of they go, well, LAPD has the most like the best quality urban tactical training because of the different type of environments we go through here for LA SWAT and LAPD. So Delta Force learns from them, and LAPD and SWAT learns from Delta Force, and there's that nice cross between the things. But it's true, they're training in facilities sometimes that they're not seeing the streets all the time. They're not getting into that training all the time.
I had to put out, I'm again going back to social media. Guys are asking, what was that? Like, is this Jade Helm? And they're practicing for martial law. It's like, nah, man. They got big cities in other countries too. Hello, man. They're not exclusive to the U.S. But yeah, folks need to go out and train in big cities, and you're going to get that type of collaborative work between Leo and Mill.
Yeah. So I want to ask you guys. First, it's always a controversial topic. Is what's the best round to have for your pistol? Because some people prefer a 9mm, some people prefer a 45. And then the other thing, because you guys have a lot of first-time shooters or people that are just trying to find that perfect weapon for them, what is that perfect weapon, whether it be rifle, pistol, for them to get?
Let's start with caliber.
Let's just start there.
I'm gonna guess the answer, but go ahead.
I've got a whole story for this.
Oh yeah.
See, I knew it was gonna go this way.
All right.
So go ahead, Tom. Go ahead. Or Tom, you want to start?
No, you go first.
Let me tell you. Okay.
Well, no. I mean, so it boils down to caliber. If you come over and you ask, hey, I'm going to buy one gun and one gun only, and I want to use it for home defense, recreational shooting, and all-around firearm, right? So the fact is we're in a Glock world, right? We're in the United States. It's a Glock world. For folks that don't know, Glock 19, Glock 17, most popular handguns in the United States, so probably not a bad firearm to consider getting if you're only going to get one. The additional versatility of the Glock 19 versus the Glock 17 is the Glock 19 will accept a Glock 17 mag. Okay. So if you are in a gunfight with someone and they happen to have a Glock 17 and they go down, you can pick up their mags and continue to work with your gun.
The other way around.
It does not work the other way around. So again, if you're only going to get one, the Glock 19 is a bit smaller, a little bit easier to travel with, a little bit easier to conceal, depending on what you're going to do with it. But both are pretty much the most popular guns, again, in the United States, and both are 9mm. Yep. So it brings me to caliber. And again, as far as caliber goes, that is being that those are the most popular handguns. When you start looking around at law enforcement agencies and what we have going on, mostly are carrying 9mm. Some agencies are into 40 still, but again, in a disaster scenario, if you're out there and you have your firearm with you and you come across a downed police car or whatever it may be, chances are you're going to find 9mm ammo in the cab of that car, and it's going to be readily available. If you're moving from house to house, guy has a couple thousand rounds of ammo, he likely didn't run out the door with it. You're going to be able to take stuff, use it, and move on.
Plus, you got to look at the investment aspect of a firearm. I mean, they're not cheap. They're not expensive, but they're not cheap either. I mean, you feel them when you purchase a firearm. Yep. So two things with the Glock 19 is because they are so prolific, plenty of aftermarket parts allow you to customize the gun if you decide to move into the competition side of the house. Secondly, it'll allow you to get replacement parts. And then the 9mm piece, there's not really a lot of ballistic data out there supporting the 45 is this uber lethal round. And the truth is the 9mm is wholly lethal
I mean, a 22 caliber. I mean, is lethal
it
in the
is.
right
You got to
shot.
get you got to get some. I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to shot placement. It's
Yeah.
either electrical between the eyes or plumbing between the nipples. I mean, there's basically those two spots to turn out the lights. But if you miss them with a 45, doesn't matter, right? You still miss them.
Yeah.
But I also look at ammo capacity. I was thinking something the other day. I'm wondering if, and I have no studies or evidence to back this up. I'm wondering if some firearms like the 1911s remain popular in less gun-friendly states because inherently they carry less than 10 rounds.
Yeah, just say, remember, we are doing this podcast from California, so
This
we're
is true,
in
yes.
theory all running 10
behind
rounds or
enemy
less.
lines here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just came from the South. Coming from the South, moving into California, of course, outside of California, it feels like you're kind of moving into the old Soviet Union. But you do need to consider your local gun laws. But yeah, 9mm is a good round. I like having, I like having a 15-round magazine when the law allows for me to do so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want that lethal magazine capacity. If I can get 15 rounds, I'll carry 15. If I can get 20, I'll carry 20.
Yeah. From my perspective, like I take the same perspective as you, with the 9mm being more readily available across in a shit hit the fan situation. That's the round I go with. And like I've had this discussion with Sonny on one of our other shows, is that like actually survival thing. I'm not looking at protection. I'm looking at survival in the sense that I'm going to carry 22 rounds because I can carry a crap load of those rounds with me, and that's going to take a squirrel, and if I need to eat, I can shoot that squirrel, I can shoot that pigeon with that 22. That's kind of where my mindset goes. I'm not necessarily looking at the defense side. I'm looking at the long-term survival, what I'm going to have, because weight of 9mm to 22 is not significant, but you add 1,000 rounds, it takes a lot more space in your carry. It takes a lot more space.
Yes, it depends what's readily available as well.
Exactly, yeah.
I've always felt that for gathering food in a survival setting, archery is probably a relevant skill.
That's actually on my list of. I want to go. I tell you this. I want to go bow hunting, but first things first. Got to learn
how to actually bow.
It's not hard.
It's a good skill.
It's not hard, but once you see it and see it for what it is, and you figure out that it's got a limited range, and all of a sudden you'll kind of realize, hey, if you're going to go bow hunting, you actually have to know how to hunt because you got to sneak right up on them if you're going to hit them.
To stock is a whole different. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the bow and arrow was a profound weapon in especially in Western expansion in the United States, because it offered them rapid fire over the, until of course cartridges came out and all that stuff. But as we were expanding into the West, the bow and arrow was great because they could just, they could.
Well, for a while
take
in
their
Europe, before
ammunition
the
back.
gun came around, bows and arrows were really
Crossbows, but they're good. I mean, they're good weapons. I mean, I got a bow at the house. It's set at somewhere between 60 and 70 pounds. I mean, it'll kill a person outright.
I mean, I think one of my go bags I have is like slingshots.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have to,
Yeah, so do you guys all have go bags and that kind of situation and everything, or is that just like the regular civilians trying to be cool and having go bags? Is that like me and Sonny going?
Yeah, probably.
I think go bags are popularized largely by the military population who are used to kind of carrying that 1 to 2, maybe 3-day patrol pack, just kind of have it in around, but. That 72-hour planning metric that everybody, it's my 72-hour go bag. That's kind of the national average of how long it took after an incident to restore services. Right. So that's everywhere from Hurricane Katrina to however long that took to, hey, the lights went out somewhere in Cobb County, Georgia, and they got it back on. So that average is it's a good number to start with if you just don't know where to go at 72 hours. But for emergency planning, you can do caches. You can hide stuff. You don't have to carry it on you.
Yeah.
I mean, go bags, though, to talk about, that depends on where you're going. I'm a fan of them to a certain degree. We build them custom in our shop for folks, but ours are more. We can have a whole discussion. Honestly, one of the classes that we offer is called Mastering Disaster, and it's put on by a guy who's a professional first responder. I mean, Team Rubicon, the whole thing. He's a former French Foreign Legion soldier, but he has responded to some of the biggest national disasters that we have, and there's actually some very interesting and extremely relevant information to know, because 72 hours, like Jay's saying, is kind of the national metric, but it's not 72 hours. If a big earthquake happened in LA and it was, our water pipes are 100+ years old, they're going to break. They're not coming back up anytime soon.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get off on a tangent about survival stuff, but just a go bag in general, there's nothing wrong with being prepared. And the most common one that we help folks build out is just the get home bag, essentially. If I'm a commuter into downtown LA and there's an earthquake and the freeway shut down, it could be for miles. Now I'm going to get out of my car and I'm going to walk home. How comfortable am I if I'm just getting out in my work shoes and whatever? I'm going to make a walk
women, they're in an office building, they have heels.
Yeah. So I mean, simple things to put into a go bag is your
Tennis
get home
shoes,
bag. That's where your supplies should be, and your continued care for yourself. But I mean, why wouldn't you have something that you carry every day that's got water, some amount of food in it? I could go through the whole packing list that we put in the bags, but ours is generally, it's a 24-hour bag. You know, a one full MRE, you've got 1,000 calories of food, water readily available, the ability to filter water, you know, a few things to help you get found, glow sticks, paracord, you know, that kind of stuff you can do all kinds of things with. A glow stick and a paracord makes a giant halo at night if you're looking to get found.
Yeah.
And if you're not looking to get found, they're excellent for nonverbal communication purposes. There's a lot of stuff. Every tool in your bag ideally should have
Chem
more
lights
than
are
one
good
use.
for when people are panicking and they, oh my God, what's going on? I want to help, or I need something, or I don't have my stuff. You hand them a chem light, like here. Like, oh, cool, thanks.
Thank you. I feel better now.
Okay, yeah, great.
Strap this around.
Here's
Go.
your safe space.
Like, I'll
Like a
crack
pacifier.
this in the dark closet.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like in my car right now, like I've got the chem lights, I've got paracord, I've got food, I've got water, I've got all this stuff. Because like for me, I'm an outdoors kind of person. So when we go out to the desert, I'm thinking if my car gets stuck 45 minutes in the dirt, like that's gonna take me a day to walk like out to where I'm going, kind of thing.
Is your kit mobile?
It kind of not.
Is it in the backpack though?
It's not in a backpack. I have like an actual watertight like case that's inside of the car, and it's like it's got a little compass on it. It's one of those things that like they sell to civilians. Go, hey, look, this is your survival kit. But I have one of those boxes, and it actually keeps most of the stuff like dry and everything in worst case. But I don't have, because I always carry a backpack with me. So I've never really thought like, oh, I'm gonna put it back, because my backpack's over here, and that's got a lot of other stuff inside of it that I usually carry as well with me. So I never thought about putting the backpack in a car or a bag in the car kind of thing.
The bag that we build out, we just suggest it's got an Nalgene bottle attached to it. And basically boil water in that thing. It's got a bladder for water, but it's empty. If you just fill up that bottle of water every morning before you go to work and put the bag in your car, the rest of the supplies are there. And if and when you ever need it, you pull it out, strap it on, and start walking.
No, you don't have to have a bag either. I mean, if you're in a city, if you had a nice small carry-on bag with a roller thing, you know, if you're walking down the street and you got your supplies in a roller bag, you just look like a goober who failed to pack properly.
Yeah.
If I see you walking out of downtown LA, coming off the, you know, the heels of an earthquake with a big 3 foot tall backpack full of goodies, I'm like, no, I didn't pack my stuff, but that guy did.
Yeah.
Perhaps he's walking it to me for me to take.
Yeah. That's one of the things too, like trying to be discreet and with the stuff you have, and that's always one of those things, like where do you find that practicality with like discreetness? Because a lot of these companies, when you want that practical kind of stuff, they kind of make it all tactical and all this stuff with it, and then but like the dolly, the suitcase kind of thing.
Beyond 72 hours, I mean, if you want to play it out like worse than that, right? I mean, it's just like what's that? The Walking Dead. I remember there's a tagline they had was "Fight the dead, fear the living."
Yeah.
Which the whole show's more not necessarily about the zombies. It's about the other survivors. Like, you have something I want, I'm going to take that from you, right? Just like we're talking about the backpack.
Sure, yeah.
Like when it really gets bad, or even here in fucking LA, they have riots or whatever. They're making runs on stores and waters. Like, they lose their mind on the simplest little thing.
Well, we win some kind of
Imagine
thing.
if there was
we
something
lose
really
our mind and
imagine if
start
something
burning cars
really
and everything.
serious and what
Yeah.
people are, you know, you need to defend yourself.
Yeah, so you got to remember too, it's not hard for 911 to get overwhelmed. There was a snowstorm in Atlanta about 3 or 4. It's probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. We called it the snowpocalypse. They got about an inch of snow, and it was absolute pandemonium.
They did the same thing in Portland a few weeks ago. I was up there.
But they were overwhelmed, and I remember after a couple hours, a word came out over the radio. Hey, if you call 911, they're not even responding unless it's 3 or more.
You should
unless it's
assume that
3 or
that's
more
out of the
vehicles.
equation when it hits the fan, right?
And you can, and you can see ambulances just stuck on the interstate with patients in the back, can't go. It's just gridlock. So it's not that the EMS guys won't step up to the plate.
Right.
It's like even in the aftermath of the Pulse nightclub shooting and the Bellagio out in Vegas and stuff, sometimes they're just going to be overwhelmed. And if you don't possess the know-how and you don't possess the equipment, sorry. I mean, it's and I hate to be blunt about it, but you got to Noah built the ark before the storm, right?
Right.
So
not during or after. Right?
That's all it is. And I'm not trying to be insensitive on this stuff, but one of the things that we can do to kind of increase, our resiliency overall is take some first aid training before everything goes down.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent to different trainings and different stuff. I've talked with Sonny on here before because my background before I was doing all the airsoft stuff, I was in the pet world doing a lot of production stuff. And one of the biggest things I've taken away from that was our pet first aid class, because my dog, I love my dogs and everything. And so when we had one dog which we still don't really know if it was a brain tumor or what, but like when he basically fell to the floor and wasn't responding, I kept my cool and was able to check his vitals, check and make sure he was breathing still, get him into the car securely, board it, put a board underneath. And I'm like, wait, this is all the same stuff I can do for humans as well. Yeah. And so, but I'm keeping myself calm and we got into the hospital. Unfortunately, we did lose him because of the situation he was under, but I was able to keep cool. Well, everyone else around me, like in the family, they were kind of panicking. They didn't know what to do. And I realized, oh crap, I'm the only one who went through like 20 some hours of first aid training for
knowledge is power.
Yeah. And I wasn't even actually hands on. I was the guy filming all the production, but then I edited it all and I'm listening. And so it was one of those things where I saw it all getting done and I was there in the room when it was all getting taught. So I learned almost the same way that they did for the people who actually took the course. But it's one of those things where if the CQB course that we've had here, I've tried to get to everyone that I can because I learn something new every time I come. And I still haven't done any real still training courses yet because I don't have a good reason why not. I don't know.
Do you guys, I think I asked you this before, I can't remember the answer, but do you guys offer, was it the TCCC?
It's TAC Med training, so I'm not running programs to get you a card carrying TCCC guy.
But covers this kind of
but
same
yeah, it's
stuff.
the same stuff.
Jay, are you familiar with TCCC?
I've heard of TCCC. Yeah. So I was on the committee for a little while. Help kind of talk out and develop and hash out some of the stuff that is TCCC.
So for those
but I practice it
that
for
are
years.
watching that don't know what TCCC is, what is that?
So it's Tactical Combat Casualty Care. The easiest way to look at all the TCCC or TECC is simplified. It's just expeditionary medicine or the military trauma model. Right. What to do when your patient can't get to the hospital fast enough. Okay. So the difference between TCCC is it has relevant combat experience from the military versus TECC, which has relevant operational experience from the law enforcement EMS side. But item for item, medically speaking, they're almost the exact same thing. But that's the basis of it. So the reason I like using TCCC, TECC, that military trauma model in an austere setting for civilians is because it takes into account that if you call 911, they're not coming. Doesn't mean they won't ever come. It just means that right now when you're used to them coming, you can't count on them. So I always, urge my students, absolutely call 911 without question. You need to call 911 and do everything.
Just get that ball rolling, just in case.
But if it's going to be 2 hours before they respond to you dropping a chainsaw on your foot, perhaps you need to put something on there.
Yeah, we took that course. Oh, you weren't there.
I wasn't there for that one.
So we had some guys come in for that course. They had a lot of first responders, some different EMTs taking the course as well. And the gist of it was that all these studies and stats of that, something like 70-80% of the casualties that were lost in war, if they could just stop the bleeding, they would have saved a lot of them.
Well, extremity bleeding.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, data is, when it comes to medicine, data is very, very important, and it's oftentimes misrepresented. But we're doing basically data-proven, procedures.
What should your focus be on in this situation?
Yeah, we're trying to take the guesswork out of it. I tell the students, hey, the science is in the sequence. Because people what if me. What if I come up across a guy and he has this? Don't care what your what if is. I'm going to tell you. Do massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia. Done. Every time, no questions asked. It just simplifies the whole process.
Yeah.
So what we did here is they gave us, while we're doing the classroom, and then every so often he would, yell, right leg, and try to put a tourniquet on, just like to see, catch you off guard, how fast you could put a tourniquet on. And then they showed us how to get the Israeli bandages and stop bleeding. He had a little cadaver or whatever. And then once the first half of the class, we kind of got some knowledge. Then on the field, they set up a scenario of smoke and sounds, whatever, with an active shooter scenario. And we'd go in groups like 4 or 5, and a couple of the guys would be like security, and the rest of us would be, the EMTs. And we had no idea how many shooters or how many casualties. And then we came across somebody, we'd have to, figure out, is he dead? Do we deal with him on the X? Do we take him off the X? Which way do we go? All this stuff, right? While some people are shooting at us. And we had some cops in the group, and they were going to work our security, and we had a plan. Okay, so you guys take the lead. Once we get to a casualty, I told them kind of secure it, right, so we can work on them and make a decision. But they went into cop mode, and they saw the bad guys and started engaging them and chasing them down. And I'm like, what are you guys? So we had to make a decision to get them off the X, and then when we kind of
see, that's the complicated part of training,
because that's how they're trained. But we made a decision before we went in there that don't protect us, because right now that's your job. But they said afterwards they couldn't say it's hard for us to turn that off. We saw the bad guys, we went to engage them.
But see, that's why you got to have. That's why you should try to culminate in like emergent level stuff, whereas opposed to cannon everybody into this box scenario where the assaulter folks are going to want to go assault, medical folks are going to want to go medical, right, and hopefully they meet in the middle. Right. When you set up a scenario, you basically let them run through their own TTPs. They have to accomplish a mission. However they get the casualty back as collectively as a group is however they get it back. So they can't really can it if you set the training up right. I found 2 basic things when it comes to, I'm not suggesting that the course you took is improperly ran in any way, but a lot of TAC med courses, when I see them, they define the X in very limited terms. It's a singular spot. We're all aware of it. It's just, you could probably just write an X, right? And students end up taking 1 or 2 actions. They either magically become fucking John Wick, and just boom, 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 boom. And then remove the tactical from the equation, and just sit there and spend all the time in the world treating on the X. Or option 2 is, screw this, they just drag the patient out and just alleviate themselves from the care under fire training altogether. Right. Now, both of those are decent options. I'm not saying don't do just one depends. Or the other, but I am saying there's more than one X. You could be in a sustained engagement for over time and over distance, and you need to be prepared in a care under fire setting to manage both your lethal fires and, for your buddy's sake, or my sake, if I'm the injured one, you got to manage both your lethal fires plus your medical skills. We all know there's time to make radio calls, reload mags, check this, check that. And all those little lulls and fires and gaps, you could be putting tourniquets on, positional airways, or yelling, hey, bro, why don't you put your tourniquet on? I've always said, as the medic, I should be the laziest and least deployed guy on the battlefield. So if I'm yelling at you to put your stuff on, A, I don't want to come over there, and B, I want you to do it.
Yeah, we had multiple casualties, some of those scenarios. So the X was like all over the place, and we had to decide who you take care of him, you take care of him. Is he DOA, or are we going to get all these scenarios? But then when we lost the guy, because in our group only a couple guys had guns, not everybody had guns. So their job was to keep them off of us so we can either make our decisions. We lost track of them, and it was like, okay, fuck, we're vulnerable here. What do we do? And
so in the military is really, 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 really good at mass casualty triage. They're really good at it. They're just awesome. Everybody should at least try some military-style triage if they're going to run mass casualty scenarios. I like to call them mass casualty scenarios because active shooter, in my opinion, is a bunch of like anti-gun gobbledygook where we're focusing on the gun. Because if I took a minivan and I drove it into a crowd, I still have a mass casualty scenario with the threat, a human-driven environmental threat. It just isn't going pop every time somebody gets hit. So it is mass casualty and triage. But active shooter, loosely. And that's an issue with active shooter stuff, is because we're focused on the Second Amendment. We can never get past, hey, what did we do with the gun piece? Okay, there's really 2 halves of this equation. First thing you got to do is stop the threat, mitigate the threat, i.e. you got to go out there and smoke that turkey. The second part of this equation is, what are you going to do in the aftermath? Are we all just going to sit around and argue over guns while everybody's sitting around bleeding? Because that's where we're at.
Yeah.
That's where the national narrative. Let's bitch about this dude's SIG. Yeah. And whether it was purchased legally, while 10, 15 dudes are out here bleeding, and nobody wants to pony up the money to get some tourniquet training.
Right? It's just tourniquets.
That's it.
after that class, I have tourniquets on my vehicles now, just to have them. It's standard.
They're
right?
cost effective. They're light. You can So I'll admit I don't everyday carry a tourniquet. Sorry. All right, I don't
carry one on me, but
I'll have one in a backpack. I'll have one at the office, in the glove box, kitchen counter. They're kind of a little bit everywhere. They're inexpensive, and because I'm not in the Army anymore, I keep them in their wrappers. If I see a tourniquet that's not in the wrapper outside of a military and law enforcement setting, it's like, hey, thanks for the training tourniquet, because I don't know what you've done with it.
Yeah. Can't rely on it. Yeah.
Besides, you're not, it only takes you a couple seconds to pull the wrapper off, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how time constrained are you really in the civilian world? I got to have a tourniquet on in 30 seconds. Like, really? I work at I work at a store.
Yeah.
So I think I can afford the minute to run out.
And then again, some of those wrappers are hard to. I don't know.
Just don't use your teeth.
Talking kind of real world, we had this discussion before on here, but what tourniquet, is that one thing you carry with you and definitely training and everything, but what's that other potential device or thing that you should have with you kind of at all times?
What's your everyday carry?
Yeah.
You guys have?
Yeah.
So I define everyday carry. Before I tell you what I carry every day, it's my little qualifier.
Okay.
If you're at your house and you need to go get a can of Copenhagen from the gas station, it's just a minute up the street. If you don't put your shit on to go get your Copenhagen 1 minute up the street, you're not really everyday carrying. You're just putting your stuff on hoping somebody asks you about that gun that's printing, right? Yeah. That's what a lot of folks are doing. So if you're not running your stuff,
right?
if you're not running to go get your errands and really getting used to it and learning how to configure it in your life, you're really just everyday carrying, hoping that somebody asks you, hey, why are you carrying a spider coat and a tourniquet? Right. But on the everyday carry side of the house, I recommend just a tourniquet. But if you're talking about what you want to have on your person kind of at all times, an individual first aid kit or known as an IFAC. The difference between, in my world, not officially, not on paper, right? The difference between an IFAC and a bleeder kit. Most people call bleeder kits IFAC. So if all you have in your air quotes IFAC is a tourniquet and something to pack a wound with, cool, I'm glad you got it, but I kind of call that, a bleeder kit. It's really only addressing one thing.
Right.
Whereas the first aid kit, the individual first aid kit, the IFAC, has a little something in every category in March. Massive bleeder, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia, head injury. Because you just don't know what this guy's injuries are going to be ahead of time, so don't assume that, if the injuries are going to stop, especially as a civilian at that primary gunshot wound, right? What if the guy was shot and then fell, right?
Yeah.
That happens. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Guys get shot and they fall. So I treat the gunshot wound, but now I got a bunch of other stuff that's hurting them because the secondary fall. So I have an IFAC, individual first aid kit, and you can make them. And we have an IFAC at Sure Shot too. It's got everything in it, MARCH. But when you get these things and you put them together and you put them on your pouch, I hear the same shit, and it's shit. It's pure shit. It's too big and it's too heavy. Hit the fucking gym. Hit the fucking gym, you lazy bastard. Carry your fucking IFAC and save yourself, save your buddy.
What are you gonna wear it under, like a night out in the town or something? What are you?
I mean, everybody wants slick and small because it's sexy. It looks good on Instagram. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't have everything you need in it, would you? If your rifle's too heavy, would you dump the magazine in the optic? No, but that's the approach we take to another life-saving device we have, and that's the IFAC. And statistically speaking, as a civilian, you are infinitely more likely to encounter a medical emergency on the side of trauma than you ever will be to discharge that concealed carry we're running around.
Well, that's the thing. I've gotten to, there's first aid kit. There's one on my backpack. There's one in the car. There's one, almost everywhere. I have some kind of first aid kit. And that's the one thing I try to tell everybody because, you're right. You're not going to pull out a weapon or you're not going to use that weapon 99% of the time.
Right.
And that's the thing. I carry a Gerber multi-tool on me all the time. That's my everyday carry. And actually, I forgot it today because when I went to tighten a light, I go, it's not on my pocket. And I don't know why, but I have two of them. And usually they are in my pocket all the time. And it's one of those things where that thing has saved my life, not literally saved my life, but with getting cameras tightened, getting stuff pulled out. I've gotten the little pliers out of it, a tweezer from a metal shard, like stuff out of a tire kind of thing. Like that thing has been the thing I carry with me all the time. A knife is cool, but a knife is limited on what it can do. Having that multi-tool for me is that important piece of equipment that I have to have on me, especially in the line of work that I do. It's beneficial to have more than just a sharp object on me.
Yeah, and folks who do this for a living typically don't just stop at the whatever they have in their pockets. I mean, law enforcement, military, EMS, fire, all them guys, they tend to have what they need right this second, and then what they need in a couple minutes, and then what they need if they just can't get out of the situation. Somewhere in there is that tiered logistics approach to how they manage it, either from the municipality where the patrol officer may not necessarily be managing, but the municipality is. Somewhere in there's a tiered response, and all I do is encourage civilians to take the same approach. One, two is one is none. Have more than one.
Yeah. So one of the things we talked a little bit before the show, Tim Ferriss was mentioned by Sonny over here in a couple questions. So there's a couple things that I've kind of twisted his questions around a little bit to kind of pertain to the gun world and overall tactical world that we live in right now. But one of the questions I was thinking of asking you guys is, how has a failure set you up for later success? Because I mean, we have gun failures, we have like situational things like that. But like, what are some of the things you see on maybe a training day or a range day or something that's failed that actually has helped you out in the line for success?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
That's a good one. Because there's always something to learn from failure.
Well, that's the thing. But that's the whole point of training. The whole point of
exactly.
training is to go out there and replicate as close to real world, circumstances as possible, so that you can fail in a controlled environment, learn from that failure, and then make appropriate course corrections, and then move forward successfully.
Make it a strength.
So without training, the only place you're going to fail is out in the real world. That's all training is it removes failure from the streets and puts it into your training scenario. That's where it needs to be contained, is in training. But when students come through, I learn some new stuff every time. I get a little bit better. Not a bad, sometimes it's in a bad way, but most of the time they're making little mistakes. They didn't prep their gear. They didn't do enough research, and that's all great. We know when students show up, they don't know what we know, and that's the whole point of it. But they come out. And every time a student, kind of presents themselves with the gear that isn't quite set up right, or the weapon that has too many bells and whistles on it, and that's a learning lesson for me too. It's like, okay, for every reason it's failing this student, I need to take note of this, and and make sure I accommodate this, because my stuff, I had somebody way smarter and better than me help me set my kit up, so my kit's never been an issue. However, the civilians who come in, bless their hearts, they'll have their stuff rigged up in a lot of different ways, and you
God knows
kind of
what
have
their
to work
sources
through
are.
that.
Well,
Right?
I mean,
But the thing is, you have to
we
go
have to have
train
the
on
photo
that
right
stuff.
for Instagram. I
But
mean,
most
that's
of
the
these
reality.
folks, they don't get a chance to go out there and really shake their kit out. So I'm not busting their chops. It's that they come out, they dress up for Instagram. Again, get out there on the flat range. Everything looks great, right? Hey, selfie, hey. But their kit isn't functional. Remember, you got to get to the target, and you got to get home from the target, and all the kit you need to get there and get back, you got to accommodate too. Sure. It's not just shooting. There's other things folks got to do.
I saw it was Facebook or something where they had a guy doing an open carry. I forget what state this was in, and he had he had the gun. I say holstered because the handle of the gun, butt of the gun, was in the holster, and the barrel was like this, pointing that way, in the top of the holster. That's how he holstered his gun. Like, what the hell? So the holster's, it's vertical. He had the gun sitting in the holster like this.
With it, but yeah.
The barrel. I'm like, what the hell?
Worried about someone coming behind you.
Yeah, among other things, I was like, man, oh my God, these people, it's scary, right?
Yeah. So, Tommy, what through the course and everything that you've had for this whole classes that you guys offer, what's one of those like craziest things you've seen come through there from like one of your trainees?
Craziest thing I've seen? I don't know. It's hard to say that there's like anything too crazy. Let me just think. We've seen some great stuff, frankly, but let me just think if anything stands out. Well, As far as training, we've never had a training accident, fortunately, because we're obviously pushing the safety, safety procedures. Don't point the gun at anything you don't want to destroy. Keep your finger outside the trigger and outside the trigger well, which is probably the most safe thing you can do. Because if you violate any other safety rules and your finger's outside the trigger and on the frame of the gun, for example, if you flag somebody, it's not going to be the end of the world. Obviously, flagging somebody or sweeping somebody is a big no-no, and people freak out about it. But
it happens.
It's going to happen. In training, it's going to happen sometimes. And we've had some lethal weapon moves where some guys have flagged us and stuff like that. And but, overall, nothing crazy. If anything, what I see is a lot of success and people making major improvements over the time that we've had to spend with them. And I think you were coming earlier about guys coming back to courses, repeating. Mm-hmm. Several of our customers, have been to the same course over and over. And to Jay's point, we was talking about earlier about repetition. Our combat pistol class, we have some guys that have been to it 5-6 times, maybe more. Obviously, they're joining a different group of trainees along with them that day, but the instruction, they've gravitated to it. They're really working on their combat draw, their combat reloads, those kinds of things. And it's their opportunity. Hey, I get to be on the range for one day a month, and this is where they're going to go do it. And I really appreciate the fact that that's what they select to do. And they're going to take the same course. We do stress courses at the end of each class, and we try and mix them up so it's not the same. Yeah. But the same general program that they go through is the same throughout the day because they are building that muscle memory. And, of course, the guys that have been 5 or 6 times, it's a big difference from the guys that are showing up day one. But they started the same thing at day one themselves, and now they've just gone home, they've practiced, and they continue coming to the same courses. And the improvement's obvious when they're in the class.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that. Most of the folks who've got very limited to no shooting experience, they usually do very, very well when they come out to the range. As you imagine, they don't have any bad habits to break. There's no training scars. They're a little, and because they're nervous, they just do what you tell them. Mm-hmm. And generally it's a smooth day. When it comes to the way people rig up their kit and stuff, I try to tell people before you go out and start investing heavily in this gun and that kit and this arm, take a class, become an informed consumer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're not going to make fun of these folks. That's not what it boils down to. It's like they set up these. They're not functional. Yeah. I think their hearts and minds are in the right place, but they don't set up these functional, rigs, whatever you want to call it.
And one doesn't fit other people. It's unique to you.
Yeah, right? It's unique to you. Your resources.
Profile, frankly.
Yeah,
what are you going to do with
it? Your resources, your family, your capability. Some folks come out and they got disabilities and they just simply cannot do the drill. Well, it's important to know. Hey, you just cannot do this, so you don't get in over your head. It's not all about finding out how far we can go. Sometimes we just need to know, hey, if this is a circumstance, we're in trouble.
We had a student this last weekend in the austere med class, and he was like, "Oh, my back's jacked up," and Jay's like, "Well, good. Guess what? Because your back's gonna be jacked up if the shit goes down anyway. So let's figure out how to work through it with the jacked up back." And we pressed on, and they did very well.
I saw this video. I can't remember this. I see so many damn videos that get sent to me. But I think this was a Delta guy. Anyways, he a gunfighter, whatever. He does a lot of real world kind of training, whatever. So he did this one where they're on a range and the guy's right-handed shooter, and he's got a cup of coffee or a drink in his hand, right? And then he was telling him, okay, go, engage, right? And these guys were, not the instructor, but the guys would do this number. Drop and then draw. It was like, he was saying, you'd be surprised how many people just instinctively, like this is in their hand, instead of just dropping it and going for the gun, they'll switch hands and drop it and then try to shoot. And then the guys are like, I don't know why he did that.
It's because
you know what I'm talking about?
You see this a lot. You see in soft guys, and I guess nowadays gals, but guys, generally speaking, they start to figure out, hey, this is my training, my event, right? And they start getting in their head, I need to get in the mission mindset. I need to get in the real world mindset. And they become better students. The idea for a professional, soldier or Marine or airman is that they're not only professional at executing, they're also professional, students to take in new information. It's a hard switch for new people in the industry to make, but eventually you'll get to that point if, when you get that command of execution, whether it's verbal or a beep, it's like, okay, it's go time. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's go time. Dump the coffee. and then go at it.
But they were switching hand. It was so.
But you got to learn that response.
Yeah.
It's not natural.
Well, there was a.
You would think it would be natural. Just drop the fucking cup, but no, they made that extra motion to switch and then drop it.
It's not, because people tell themselves stories that just aren't true.
Right.
You know, I see it like I ran some. I call it a home defense course. It's basically modified CQB for husbands and wives and family. We'll run one of those here real soon. But in this course, I'll see folks, and there's this one lady in particular. I won't dime her out. She's awesome. She survived cancer and everything. She's out on the range. I couldn't believe it, man. You know,
She's a fighter.
Tough lady. But she would say stuff like, well, if this was for real, I would go in there and do what I had to do. I'm like, no. Yeah. What you're doing right now is exactly what you're going to do when it goes down. So if you're telling me if this is for real, you're going to go in there and shoot this guy with a simulated weapon, you know, and live, but in this case it was simulated, then you need to go in there and do exactly what you're going to do in a real world setting.
Find out if it's correct or not, right?
Yeah. And then it kind of clicked in that moment. She went in and did it. But we have a habit of, you know, most Americans who aren't fighters, aren't warriors, they tell themselves a lot of story. Hey, when shit goes down, I'll rise up. Nobody can take me if my family's on the line. It's like, I'm telling you, man, we'll take you. We'll take you.
It's Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until you get hit in the face, and then
that's the thing. I say it all the time. I'm like, I'd like to believe I'm gonna be able to stand up and fight for what I want to survive. I honestly have no clue when shit hits the fan how, like, mentally I'm going to be able to take that. Because if shit hits the fan, who knows? Your loved one might be dead next to you, kind of thing, and now you have to take that on and survive the next. How some people, like, that breaks them, and so you've got to make that decision. So we honestly all don't know unless we've been in the shit.
I think a lot of folks kind of get their emergency problem solving mindset from TV.
Yeah,
but in real life, if you got a loved one who's dead and with you, like, what, are you just going to leave their body?
Yeah.
It's not. There's other things that come. Well, what do you do with the remains?
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that we deal with, you know, out in the real world. It's like, hey, they got to come with us. We got to make accommodations. Like, do you have a plan if a loved one gets killed in a remote setting? Like, what's your plan?
Yeah. And so you've got there's a lot of stuff.
Do you take them out?
Glorified TV survival is what we kind of work off, and it's not always the case, and it's tough because we can't always, like, predict how we're going to feel in that situation. We can train, we can practice, we can get ourselves in a mindset that is going to be comfortable in a situation, but when shit actually hits the fan, we all don't know till we've actually been in it.
Do you guys have training where, say, for instance, you know, like offhand shooting, or all of a sudden, you know, left hand's arms down, you know, you call out things, whatever, so that they have to, you know, react like, okay, one hand, legs down, whatever.
Yeah, we just burned through it all day Saturday. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff for social media here in the next real soon.
They never practice it with their offhand, and they can't reload with one hand.
Well, so when I start teaching, like, firearms basics, I always put in a strong hand and offhand emergency action drills, because a lot of folks come to find out when they have to do an offhand draw, they have to reconfigure their belts. So I try to catch people early with a lot of these drills so that they're not configuring and learning one set of, you know, gear and you know, tactical systems, if you will.
That mag with
and then now all of a sudden we're learning offhand draw. Now I got to redo it all because I didn't accommodate it in the very beginning. So that's a preference. You don't have to do it that way, but I definitely two-hand, strong hand, offhand. You know, I start folks there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now from my belt if I can actually draw.
Or not just offhand, but like, say your right hand's out of commission.
Yeah.
With your offhand, can you reload? You know?
So that's what I do in the TAC Med training is we start the day off kind of going over your immediate action drills for the weapon for all three of your basic presentations: two-hand, strong hand, offhand. You know, and then we combine in there, what do you do with that injured extremity? Not only is it, you know, you aren't even going to do this. You ain't going to chicken wing it. You know, that's fine to get started to learn the technique, but at some point this thing's going to hurt. It's not going to work. Maybe you can put your stuff in your armpit. Maybe it's just your forearm that's jacked up. I mean, how many different configurations of an injury can you get? What if it's a defensive wound? You know, now what do you do? So we do accommodate in the TAC Med course, and then we force the students to perform their immediate action drills to standard. That's it. You're going to do it. You're going to keep your finger out of that trigger well as best you can, or else we're going to get on to you. But we also make it a bloody mess, too. Blood complicates everything. It makes your draw stroke harder. It is simultaneously sticky and slippery. It's amazing how much of a pain in the butt it is. But it makes it hard to put your tourniquets on. It makes it hard to do everything. So you got to have blood. You got to train to that real world
And
standard.
be surprised how many people the sight of blood just freaks them out.
Yeah.
Just the sight of it.
So are you guys using like a simulated blood? Or are you guys using like
I have
pig
my own
blood?
recipe.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's proprietary.
Okay. All right. Industry secret. It's fine. It's
Nah,
fine.
actually, you
Corn
can buy
syrup
most of your
and-
simulated blood's really good. The problem is it's expensive and it's not cost effective.
Okay.
So if you want to make up big batches of blood, you just got to get creative. Yeah, corn syrup, dish soap, the classics.
Movie industries.
Yeah, you know, I
Kool-Aid.
mean, because there is always the movie industry kind of thing, but we've had some people where they get like the pig meat, and like they show wounds in pig meat, and they
sure.
stuff that way kind of thing. So I was just wondering, like, what's your guys' kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all creative ways to get people as close to, we call it dead tissue training, but as close to live tissue as you can.
Yeah.
I think that's all commendable.
So what's like the one course, if there was one thing you guys would recommend if everybody would take a gun course, what's that one gun course you guys would recommend out of you guys'
Define
lineup?
everybody.
I'm saying like
Everybody in the U.S.?
everybody who like
what level?
Like, I'm saying at like start like one
Firearms
course.
Like if you were starting a
familiarization.
company all over again, what's the one course you would build it on?
Well, it has to be firearms familiarization because if
Yeah.
they haven't shot, then that's where you got to start.
Yeah.
Got to have a
If
foundation.
they have that at the end of that course, it's very clear when you walk out of there, you can handle almost any firearm safely. It doesn't matter. You could walk into a room, there's an AK-47 sitting on a table, and you're like, oh shit, I don't know if it's loaded, whatever, my family's going to be passing through. You can effectively pick that firearm up and manipulate it safely out of the way if that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And from semi-automatic pistols, the whole thing, they function the same. People have a very good working knowledge of the how to keep a firearm or to manipulate a firearm safely. Bottom line.
Yeah, I think
if you can do that, then you can build on that skill. I like to say from that class is it's fundamentals. And guys, we were talking about this the other day, is fast shooters, it's the rapid application of the fundamentals. It's nothing more. If you start with this, you can take it as far as you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, the firearms fam is a great place to remove the mystery and the mystique that surrounds the firearm.
So, because the reason I asked this is because I've had this discussion with my dad, and I've had this discussion with my girlfriend's mom, because my girlfriend's mom is a vice principal at a high school, and they've had numerous gun threats that come through the school. And it's a local school, and they have to shut down the school. They have to go to the kid's house, and it turns out kids just a little angsty on Instagram or something like that, but they got to take it seriously. But she's never fired a firearm. She's never, and I tell her the reality is, like, I've actually, because her daughter, like, I've introduced her to firearms through like my lively. I've been shooting since I was 5, so it's a normal thing for my life. But a lot of the family and friends around
that used to be part of the national narrative. The liberal pigs and all their anti-gun baloney keep pushing this narrative that gun violence is on the rise and all this other stuff, and at best they can put together these somewhat dubious statistics.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the deal. Back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, to some extent 70s, it kind of went away in the 80s. Gun safety was normal. When I went to high school, the hillbillies would have their hunting rifles out in the
back of the
truck, and there was
yeah.
a little .22 shooting range underneath the chow hall, or what
You
do
didn't
you
have
call
these
it in high school?
mass
Cafeteria.
shootings.
The cafeteria. Right. So this was a normal thing. Teaching firearms safety, not how to shoot, not how to do defensive, just safety. You need to go out and function the weapon in order to appreciate the safety of it. But this used to be taught. Well, this has just gone away. So now what you have is, by and large, and this is where the small business community is coming in, and social media is kind of coming in to fill that void, but there used to be very much so a national narrative around firearm safety and what you do with it. Well, that's gone. So if you're seeing an increase in firearm-related injuries, that's not necessarily, hey, gun violence is on the rise, right?
The stats
That's
they
perhaps
pick and choose.
yeah, perhaps some of these guys running around, you see them mishandling their firearms, shooting sideways, trying to load their clip. You see it all on Instagram. If they would just take a class, a lot of this would kind of go away.
With all these stats, like I know there's either side of the issue, they manipulate the national stats, right? Like, for instance, when they say school shootings, right? Well,
Again, not mass casualty, shooting.
when they say shootings, so when they say school shootings, or they say, then the media makes it like the school mass shootings, right? Mm-hmm. Those stats, when they say there's been, I don't know how many school shootings, that could be a gun was misfired by a security officer. It could be somebody drove by.
Suicide.
It could
Yeah.
be suicide.
BB guns.
A gun going off of any kind anywhere within a certain distance of the school is considered a school shooting.
Yeah.
So then right away they start thinking, multiple. No, it wasn't. Nobody was killed. Nobody was even hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you can cherry pick what stats to make it, but the stats are as far as mass shootings, multiple.
I mean, they call it a school to jack up your emotional response to that all day long, but all it is a victim zone.
Now,
if you're going to box a bunch of people in and tell them no matter what you can't defend yourself, the psychopaths are going to go there.
regardless of again, it always comes up with a debate on the guns. So let's just table that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one American that doesn't want to make sure that the schools are safe. I mean, that's we can all agree upon that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My feeling is much like I told you when I forget what shooting it was, but they had some of the victims' parents at the White House, and one of the gentlemen who lost his daughter basically says the same thing. I don't care which way, whatever, but listen, you can make a courthouse safe. You can make an airport safe. If you want to make our schools safe, you could do that today.
Yeah.
That's something you could do today, right? And do that today, and we can figure out the other stuff later. But today, if you can make us, right here in the White House, it's safe. How'd you do that?
Yeah, I use the analogy.
Make it a hard target.
I use the analogy of a bank, right?
Yeah.
So if we could somehow find the national resolve to protect our cash, right? The other day I was driving to a gas station.
Our cash is more important than kids?
The other day I was going to get Monsters of Copenhagen, as I am one to do, and this armored car come pulling up. And when they came out to go drop the cash off for the ATM, did they have holsters full of hopes and dreams? No. All right, these guys are coming out. Yeah, they were out there wearing body armor. They were packing heat because it was cash at hand. But we can't seem to find the same.
You know what's funny with that? My dad used to drive an armored truck for like almost 30 years, and I remember him. This is back in the '90s, where they had I forget what bank it was, but there's a certain major bank franchise, whatever, that complained that when they came into the bank with their guns drawn, it was upsetting the customers.
Tough shit.
And my dad was like, fuck that. I don't care if it upsets you or not. It's my ass on the line. I'm carrying X amount of money. That's standard procedure.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, tough shit.
Yeah.
And they're offended because the gun is drawn. Well, guess what? They're the good guys.
Well, that's the thing. It's because we give in to this. Oh, I'm offended. So that's not my problem.
Could you guys tone it down a little bit? Like same thing with cops coming in, fully, well, it looks too militarized or whatever. Like it's too intimidating. Could you tone it down? With a lot of the protests and whatnot. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Tone it down.
No.
It's an inanimate object. Nobody sees a fire extinguisher in the school and thinks, "Oh crap, there may be a fire. Get rid of the fire extinguisher."
I think of burned bodies.
But
those fire alarms that go off when you guys do the drills, they're really hurting my ear. I'm a little sensitive to them. Can we not have those? Yeah.
My ears are offended.
Yeah.
It's just the same passive, go along to get along stuff. But at the end of the day, if in most states, if you're going to legally mandate that I put custody of my children into your program, or else you'll call it truancy. If I'm required to put my kids in a public school,
safety the fuck
and you're
up.
going to treat them less than an ATM machine, then I don't care.
Just make it a hard target. I mean, they make this. I don't care which side of the aisle they're on.
Yeah, you
make it a hard fucking target.
Yeah.
You protect your ass over there in the Congress or a local courtroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why can't you do the same? I mean, however you want to do it. If you want, there's a debate on arming staff. Fine, whatever. I mean, there's plenty of veterans that would gladly even donate their time to protect the school.
Yeah,
I mean, there's all kinds of options, but one way or another, they need to harden schools. And right now, nobody's talking about it right now because they're talking about other things, right? And it's going to happen again. Guaranteed, it's going to happen again. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
All right. We can talk about the reasons. I obviously I don't believe it's a gun thing. I think it's more so than anything, it's a mental health issue. But and the communication between agencies, because almost every time you hear about this, someone says, "Well, I did tell somebody," or the police showed up and they asked them a few questions. They seemed okay, or there wasn't like it was never. Well, we had no idea this guy was capable of doing this, or it was always somebody like, this guy was weird, or he did talk about this, or social media had pictures of this or whatever. It's never, ever a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not surprised by it.
Right?
Yeah. I get to this topic because of my girlfriend's mom, and I go, you need to familiarize yourself with a weapon, because in worst case scenario, if you at least knew what to do when that weapon is shown, you've got a better chance of surviving. And they take this perspective of like, well, guns are bad, and I don't want to.
There are just some we have to accept.
Yeah.
There are just some
They're not
people
gonna
in
go
this
away.
world
Yeah.
that just their life's goal is to be as dependent as possible on other people.
And
That's it.
It's
that comes down to your
Unfortunately,
own
there's a lot of
private
people in this world don't
personal
believe.
security.
To be honest with you, there's some people that don't believe evil exists. They just
Yeah.
believe that sometimes there's good people who do bad things, or they sugarcoat. No, there's evil in this world, and it's also here in the United States, and your neighbor could be as evil as fuck.
Yeah.
And I think
Look at the Ted
that's
Bundy
what,
situation.
I think that's
Nice
what's good
guy.
about having
Yeah.
the combat veterans and the numbers that we have is when you go overseas and you see all this stuff. It's like, hey, look, you get a chance to peek behind the curtain. Turns out there's real bad people out here.
Yeah.
And if we just change the circumstances in the United States, just tweaked it a little bit, a lot of these people around here would behave in very similar fashions if it came time to put food on their table.
Yeah.
Right? But, so bad people are out there, or bad people can be created through hard circumstances, but bad is relevant. You have to be prepared to step up and be good. I can only qualify myself.
Yeah.
That's it. I can only
Yeah, yeah.
qualify myself.
You can
Everybody
only take
else is doing
responsibility
what
for
they're
yourself
doing.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a tough thing that we get into, trying to get everyone on the same page, the same level, and trying to get the understanding. And we'll always have that debate back and forth. And it's for the people like us that are all aware of the environment and we've grown up around it, or we've I don't even want to use the word accepted, but we've come to appreciate like what this whole kind of thing is. What's that beeping?
What is that, baby?
It might be you.
Is that me?
Somebody back there.
I don't know.
There was a stat that I read the other day. I'm going to probably butcher it, but it was
I know what
the
it is.
essence of it was that there was a survey done by X amount of people in the United States that if they were in a life or death situation or injured or dying, that they it was like something like 60-70% of them would either, a large percentage would either hope to get rescued, saved,
Yeah.
or just give up and die. Never to survive or try to fight back, or in a life or death situation, they would hope that somebody's coming to rescue them or save them, and if that's not going to happen, then they would just be
But
resigned to dying.
if I'm being honest, I think when I was younger, or maybe when I first joined the Army, I know I like to think of myself as being able to do all that, but I didn't possess the skills or the resources.
But at least the fight to
Right.
something, maybe if it's the wrong thing, just to
I mean,
curl up and
My initial response when I was younger certainly would have been, I hope help comes. And once I got older and started to realize, oh crap, I am the help. Right? I really do have to change it, because I remember thinking to myself, if I was the 911 response force for this particular event, I'm like, nah, I was confident in my skills, but I remember thinking, it's like, well, I'm it.
well,
Right? If I get in trouble, I better have the skills, because I'm it.
the Florida shooting, I think it was either the nightclub or there was a school. There was a lot of blowback of some of the cops that showed up first that did not go in the building. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was a school
Right?
in Florida.
And then I heard a lot of guys were saying, F these guys, they should have went in there, but then they were trained not to go in and wait. So I can't speak on that behalf. I don't know. Did you understand the controversy about it? I understand, it's one thing to be the first guy in, and that's probably a personal decision, but
it's easy to criticize law
Right,
enforcement,
right.
guys. It's easy to do that. But the truth is, most municipalities, let's take Los Angeles, for instance, it's the size of the city, the size of the population. They have a ton of cops. And it's no longer, hey, it's just the sheriff and Barney Fife, and we can sit around and we can train all day.
Right.
It's like these guys, they got to cycle through 5,000-6,000 people a year to keep them current. I mean, they're not training an army from a combat standpoint, but like training an army, they have to process a lot of folks through there.
Right.
So, cops can only do as much as they can do, and they're going to step up to the plate if you let them. But at the end of the day, they are a response, not the only response. So if you're not satisfied or confident in the emergency response setting that you're in, it's up to you to fill that gap.
Yeah.
Right? You can sit there and bitch and moan about your local EMS and local law enforcement all day long. Look, they're out there doing good stuff, right? But you got to make up the difference. That's all there is to it.
right, like in those scenarios, you only have. If you're like say in the school, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's only three options. Either you escape, you stay in place, or you fight.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I mean that's it.
But which one's
Regardless
the
of the response
best
that you-
answer, you don't know.
Right,
until
but
you're in the
regardless of the response you choose, I think in that setting it's easy to understand that when seconds count, 911's only minutes away.
Yeah.
So you have to be decisive, and you have to have somewhat of a game plan before the event goes down.
Do you have that much time to stay alive? Are they knocking on the door, like the bad guys coming down the hall? I mean, it depends.
It's
on
like
the start.
barricading yourself in. You got to figure once that shooter, quote unquote, goes loud and starts making a scene. Hey, the cops are coming, and they ain't coming to play nice.
Yeah.
Right.
He knows that. Once that thin blue line shows up, his days are numbered. Whatever this event is going over.
You can shelter. Can you shelter for so
ticking.
much time? Right.
Can you be enough of a deterrent? And I know this sounds harsh, but can you be enough of a deterrent that he passes on you and moves on to something that he thinks is easier?
Right.
You don't have to get into how do I build Fort Knox in 5 minutes. You just need to make him think, hey, if I'm going to do this, I can't do it here. The cops are coming.
Yeah.
Because the cops are coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's a good way to put it. Like, and again, it goes back to the simplest. It's like if there's a bear and you're the slower guy getting chased by the
You
bear,
don't have to be the fastest.
Yeah, you don't have to be the fastest, but you just don't want to be the slowest.
But see, then there goes into to having the right backup training. I
Yeah.
mean, when you're doing stuff like simunitions and these things, they hurt. So if you're not behind cover and you're not employing sound tactics, you're going to get a friendly reminder, hey, you didn't pie that wall off correctly.
Well, I mean, we get back into the airsoft talk there. It's like when you make a dumb decision out here, there's a consequence for it. And it's one of those things where, like, oh, shit, that one stung. Like, I've got a nice little stinger there. And then, okay, I learn from that and make that next time I'm going to come around that corner, I'm going to anticipate someone there and I'm going to react differently. And if there's not someone there, cool, I'm going to move to the next objective that I have. But it's one of those situations where you are constantly learning. I am a huge proponent for people to come down. If you're trying to be real world kind of situational kind of idea of what it's like to get shot at, go to an airsoft field and get shot at, because there's nowhere else you're going to be able to go and get shot at and actually go, oh, you know what, that was a dumb mistake. That move in that movie that I thought I was going to be able to do didn't work.
That John Woo movie, yeah.
The first time I played, I thought I was the coolest shit out there. I had knee pads for my skate background. I'm sliding around, cool tactical slides and everything. I couldn't walk for 3 days because it was a stupid maneuver that I was like, oh, this is painful to do. And then I'm like, I'm still dying. I look cool when I died, but
do
the
Spetsnaz roll,
yeah,
and all
and all
stuff.
of a sudden, and so now it's like, okay, let me think this through properly and not die as quickly, because when I get hit, there's consequences for it. Yeah. And so I one of the questions I had was, is training important? And I think our whole discussion today has been on training kind of thing. And I think it's very important. And whatever your training is get out to somewhere. Like, you guys are local to our area, and so it's one of those things.
You guys go out of state, I assume, right? Or no?
We can. We're going to get into as we do this long-range planning calendar, but we can be mobile.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, because, I mean, there's ranges everywhere. There's facilities everywhere around this country that can do that stuff. So that's something you guys are thinking about in the future. I want to get a couple questions in before we do call this show the end here. But one of them, gun-related, life-related, whatever. But what is the best and most worthwhile investments you guys have ever made, kind of like for like this whole industry for yourself?
Well, industry
purchase?
or
Well,
the
like
best in life, or what's the story?
it, like your whole lifestyle, I guess, is like what, like whether it's been the gun or the magazines, or whether it's been the pair of pants that you bought, or what has
knowledge.
Yeah,
My opinion is knowledge.
Yeah.
If you're on limited time, limited resources, and as I have been, I can make do with the stuff that I have, but I've only got what's in between my ears.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to get the most bang from my buck, right?
Invest in your knowledge.
Invest in your knowledge, man. Don't get out there, find other training venues, mix it up a little bit. I realize we live in a desert, but go try some forest stuff. Maybe you'll pluck a little little tidbit of info out there. But knowledge, because with that you'll be not only an informed consumer, but hopefully will make you a critical thinking problem solver along the way. And if you can get there, I can arm you up.
Yeah,
You'll be okay.
I agree with that. When you said that, I was trying to think through, like, what's the best thing I paid for, and
I was gonna say iPad, training. But I mean, now I feel like a dumbass because when you said no.
No, it's got to be training, which is knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's tons of different courses out there, like Jay was saying, lots of different opportunities to try different things out. I mean, whatever, med classes, shooting tac classes, escape and evasion class. I mean,
Combinations of all of the above.
and you build up your skill set, your toolbox over time. But it really, it boils down to knowledge. And Jay and I were talking the other day. If you didn't have it, but you know what you need, you know ways to make it. Like Jay can go into Home Depot and walk out with an IFAC. You know, you can figure out the parts and tools. It doesn't exactly have to be what you can buy off the shelf, but if you know what you need that to do, be it a firearm or what the situation is, you can make it work.
Yeah, it's very much like you ever see those shows. There's, I think it's off the air, with the survival show where they have the two guys and
dual survival.
Yeah, there you go. Where they're okay. The scenario is you're stranded in the middle of nowhere. Here's your car. So they're taking the seats apart, using the vinyl covers for this, the battery connect. I mean, just whatever they've got.
Yeah, and that's kind of, so if you look at Sure Shot, we have a deep stable of highly qualified cadre. So you coming out to our courses, you get a pretty eclectic blend of background experience. You know, you get SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, you know, the full Monty. And even though we may all be talking about, you know, your pistol grip, everybody's going to come from a different background, and they're going to be able to impart upon you that little tidbit of knowledge that hopefully either fixes the problem or enhances your capability, even though we're talking the same subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to know from your guys' experience on the range and like tactical like kind of stuff, what's one of the most like unusual habits that you guys have like kind of discovered that like actually is like one of those things you really can't like live without now because it's really been beneficial for you?
Man, that's a tough one. A new habit I picked up since we're...
Well, I wouldn't say new. I'd say like unusual habit. Like something that kind of goes against the grain of like...
Oh, yeah. I like to fight light, freeze at night. So I have what's called the rules of sixes. If I don't use it on 6 combat missions, 6 weeks downrange, or 6 months in garrison, I shit can. I don't care who say carry it.
Okay.
That's me.
Okay. Any unusual habit that you've like kind of taken into like just discovering and kind of go with it, and it's against the grain, against the norm of what people kind of go with?
Gosh, I'm trying to think on the range if there's anything different. No, I mean, if anything, just what I've adopted is gear setup.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I can't even say I have the greatest one, but just to get out on the range and get there quickly and efficiently and get my gear on, just some of the gear I've adopted to be able to do that. You know? But
not anything too unusual kind of thing. Yeah.
You know what? I wish I could say there was something cool that I was doing that somebody else did. You know what I'm saying?
Fair enough. So we've gone just about an hour and a half now with the show, so I'm definitely going to start wrapping this up here, but I do want to give you guys a moment to share some information about what you guys are doing here, where they can find more information about Sure Shot Ready, and where they can get more information about taking your guys' courses.
All right, so you can follow us at SureShotReady.com, of course. We're on Instagram at SureShotReady. My personal account's 18_Zulu. And we're also on Facebook at SureShot. Where else we got?
Yesterday we were sure shit ready for just a moment.
For a minute. That was on the back end. I was in there monkeying with some of the back end stuff, and I typoed it. And Tommy thought our page said sure shit. I was like, no, that's my bad.
You know when you get really popular, somebody's going to come up with a page like that. Now you know you're big.
We should keep that.
In my defense, I told him, hey, ignore everything you see on Facebook right
That's
now.
true. I didn't get that in advance.
Fair enough, yeah.
But hey, anything else? If you're in our area, our circumference, you're close enough to stop by and see us. Any of the stuff we talked about today, if you want to talk about it in person and hear from guys with experience, like Jay was saying, we've got a lot of great guys there in the shop, so it's not hard to walk in there and interface with them. And if you want to talk about gear and maybe what gear you're setting up for, and get some I get some vetted advice, you know, like what you're doing with your plate carrier, your gun belt, how you're going to set it up. If you want to talk about that stuff, stop on in and see us. The idea of our shop is to help folks that are interested, whether they're, well, if they're starting untrained, is to go from A to Z and to be able to help them along that journey and not make it a mystery. So we're there for that type of information, help, or to be a part of their journey and do whatever training they want to do.
What city are you based out of, or what?
We are in San Dimas, California.
Off Arrowhead Highway.
Awesome. So, guys,
635 Arrow Highway to be exact.
fair enough. Guys, if you guys have taken anything away from this episode today, training, like that is a big thing we wanted to discuss today.
Over and over again.
Get out to a local course that you might have if you're not in the local area. If you guys are, check these guys out. They're legit. They do a lot of stuff. So definitely, guys, thank you for joining us here on Tac City Unfiltered, episode 4. I've been producer Derek. This has been Sonny. We've had our guests, Tommy and Jay, joining us. And we'll see you guys next week. All right. Bye.
Yeah.